Hello everyone, my name is Kevin Giesland. I'd love to talk to you about investment properties. This is kind of an overview of several different topics I think are important with investment properties. And as time goes on, I'll be posting videos as well that has more specific details for different aspects of rentals. Depending on what your goal is going to depend on what type of rental property you're going to purchase and what could be a good deal or what might not be a deal for you to jump on but actually pass on. First thing that a lot of folks go for with rentals is cash flow. Cash flow is essentially if you're able to rent out a property for one amount and then you subtract out all the expenses for that property, the loan, property taxes, home insurance, repairs, everything else, and can still come out with a profit, that would be considered cash flow. So anyone that's wanting to replace their full-time job, their full-time income that they're currently getting, cash flow would be the thing that they would be shooting for, and that's their goal. Second thing would be equity. Equity is essentially, let's say a home is worth $100,000 and I'm only paying $75,000 for it. I'm getting $25,000 in equity. That means I'm essentially getting a discount for the property. In the future, I should be able to sell that property and make a certain amount because I bought it at the discount originally. The next thing would be just something to pass on to kids. I've had a few folks that I've talked with that they don't necessarily care if they make money each month. In fact, some of them are actually okay losing a little bit if in the next 10, 15, 20 years they're able to leave something to their kids or grandkids that they can sell and make some good money on. The last item here would be somewhere to put money. I've had folks approach me and just ask them questions. Hey Kevin, I've got an extra 50,000, 100,000, 200, whatever the case may be. They have extra cash and just don't really know what to do with it. So the return on rentals might be higher than a CD or stock or just sitting in the bank account. People ask me quite often, are rental properties risky? My answer is absolutely. To me in life, most things are risky, but you always have backup plans. So in my particular case, I think it's very important to have reserves. What reserves are essentially is just extra money in the bank. So let's say I'm out of pocket $50,000 for rental property and I have $55,000 in my bank account. That means I have an extra $5,000 left over, which is $5,000 in reserves that I can apply if someone doesn't pay me in rent or if I have any repairs or evictions that I have to go through. So depending on who you are and how risky you are is going to depend on how much you should keep left over in the bank. It just kind of depends on each person's situation. The thing I like about rentals is you have options. So obviously you want to rent out the home and make more money than what your payment is. If that doesn't work, you can always lower rent. So instead of making $500 a month, you might be able to rent it out and make $300 a month. If that still doesn't work, you could let a property manager take it over. Basically what a property manager does, there's someone that's going to find the tenant to move into the property, and they're also going to take all the phone calls and payments being made for the property. However, they will be charging a fee to do so. So in my eyes, property management can be expensive, but it can also be worth it. Probably one of the more rare circumstances that you could look into would be, let's say I live in one home and I'm trying to rent out the other home, and the other home I'm not having any luck with. It's a possibility that you might be able to move into the other home and rent out your current home if it's in a more desirable area or if the home is in better shape. Again, most people don't like moving, and most people personal homes are probably a little bit nicer than the rental property, so this is probably the most rare thing on this list. Next would be owner financing. Owner financing would essentially be, let's say I have a home that I don't necessarily want to completely sell and get a large sum of money, but I also don't want to have to worry about renting out and worrying about the repairs. Someone could approach me and say, hey Kevin, I'm not doing a regular loan. Is there any chance if I gave you a certain amount of a down payment that we agree on that basically would allow for you, myself, to be the bank for the individual? So basically, someone could give me 10% down and I could give them a loan against the property and they would be paying me each month instead of the bank. Now, the benefit to me in that scenario is I would be getting interest and I would not be responsible for the repairs. The last item is sell it. So pretty simple here. You can't rent it out, having difficulties, want to kind of just get rid of it. You are able to sell it. You will have closing costs. Typically, you have to pay the buyer and the seller's realtor, title fees, and a few other random fees as well. So it can be pricey, but as a last resort, it's always an option. Just a couple of details as far as the financing goes. Mortgages are allowed on a 30-year amortization. Basically, all an amortization is, it shows how long it's going to take for the loan to be paid off. So if something's amortized over 30 years, that means if you keep that same loan in 30 years, the balance will be $0. This allows for more cash flow because it's spread out over 30 years, not a shorter term. Second benefit that a mortgage could have is the interest rate's going to be fixed for 30 years. So you don't have to worry about that rate going up or down. If it goes down, obviously you might look into getting a new loan on it in the future. Having said that, if you like the rate that you have, it is stuck, you don't have to worry about it changing. Typically, you will be at 75 to 80% loan to value. So what that means is that if the home is worth $100,000, typically you'd have to put down at least 20 to 25%. Closing costs are usually a little bit higher with a mortgage. Depending on a few details, you could be expecting $6,000 to $8,000 in closing costs. Another thing that might be holding you back if you're looking at a mortgage, you're only allowed up to 9 financed properties. So for instance, let's say that I have 5 mortgages and I have 5 bank loans on investment properties. I can no longer get a new mortgage because I'm capped out on how many financed properties I'm allowed to have. On the bank loan route, bank loans typically are easier to get. There's usually not as much documentation involved, at least in my personal experience. However, the amortization is off a 15 or 20-year note. Now that's great because the home is paid off quicker. However, that means that your cash flow each month is going to be lower. Since the term of the loan is shorter, the payment each month is going to be higher. So you won't be putting as much into your bank account. In addition to that, the interest rate is typically not fixed for the full term of the loan. Usually it's about 5 years that it's fixed. After that point, the interest rate can change. One potential benefit, some bank loans do allow up to 80 to 85% loan to value. So this essentially would be you're not having to put down quite as much as you would if you're doing a mortgage. Next thing, you are saving a little bit in closing costs. I have here $2,000 to $5,000 in closing. That's after adding in 1 year of home insurance, which is technically not required. You can pay that on your own each month, but just for my scenario, I have it added in. The other big benefit is there's unlimited number of properties. As long as the bank is willing to give you money for the loan or for the home, you can get as many as needed. One component of rental properties is your LTV, otherwise known as your loan to value. And essentially this is how much do you owe on the property versus how much is it worth. If you ask the missus, my favorite day of the month used to be the 22nd. Every day I'd get a mortgage statement basically showing what my bill is. It would show me the new principal amount that I owed on the property. So I have an Excel sheet that I would update every single 22nd of the month. And every month I could track as tenants are paying me each month, they're paying down my debt. So my net worth, how much value I have, my liabilities versus my assets is increasing each month because the tenants are paying it down. The other cool thing with this is the appreciation is typically or hopefully over time properties are going up in value, not down. So in this example, I just have a handful of my properties that I own. The value has been increasing over time. So every 6 months to a year, I look at what the value of other homes in that neighborhood are, and I update this as well. So it's just kind of something that I can gauge that shows me over time how much the property is worth versus how much I owe, and it's pretty nice to see that amount getting bigger and bigger. Because cash flow is usually so important, I wanted to kind of go over some details here. When I first started in real estate, my goal was to make $40,000 a year without working by the time I was 40. I did a 15-year, and a 20-year note on my first 3 homes. I used to be such a penny pincher. If I could save half a point on the interest rate doing a 15-year versus a 30, I would do it in a heartbeat, no questions asked, which was great. It put me in a good position because the tenants were paying down the home so quickly. What I didn't realize is when you do a 15-year, you're married to that payment. Is that whatever that payment is each month, you have to make it. What I started looking at down the road was looking into the idea of doing a 30-year note, and I can still pay extra if I choose to. So for example, I can have an automated payment where I put extra each month on top of my monthly payment. That's going to pay down the home that much quicker. So I could still pay the home off in 15 years, but if I wanted to have more cash flow, or God forbid I lost my job, I could remove that automatic payment, and at that point, I'd be making more each month to help offset my other expenses. So in my scenario here, I was averaging about $250 a month with 3 properties, so about $750 total. Having said that, I switched that off to a 30-year note instead of a 15, and each property doubled on average of how much I was getting each month. So instead of getting about $9,000 a year in extra cash, I was now getting about $18,000 a year in extra cash. So this is just an example. All that to say, I realized that being open to a 30-year, the $40,000 a year that I originally wanted to make, I could hit that goal a lot quicker if I was doing 30-year notes instead of 15 or 20-year notes. This slide right here is known as BRRRR. It's from Bigger Pockets. It's a wonderful website. They have a lot of podcasts. I used to listen to it every single day for about 2 years. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refi, repeat. Basically, you're buying a home that's usually in a little bit worse shape that you're going to have to put some money into. You fix it up, you get a tenant to move in, and then instead of selling it, which at that point you'd be flipping the home, instead of selling it, you go to a bank and get a new loan to pay off your original loan and pay yourself back for the repairs. At the end of the day, you're recycling money. On the next slide here, I'll have an example of exactly what that looks like. On my current home I live at now, it was an individual that his dad and uncle built a house 70 years ago. He's getting older. He doesn't want to deal with it. There wasn't a sign in the front yard. It was not on the market. It was just, if you know someone that knows someone, let me know. I'd be open to selling my house. All that to say, I didn't pay top dollar for it. I got a pretty good deal. I purchased the home for right around $50,000. It's about 2,200 square foot house and 21 acres. I spent about $45,000 to fix up this property. When I purchased it, it was not livable. It did have pretty much a complete remodel is what we did. There's also about $10,000 in holding costs. Holding costs would basically be the property taxes and home insurance while I was fixing up the property, as well as the interest and utilities that I paid while the work was being done. That brings my grand total to about $105,000. I then went and got a bank loan. The bank showed that the value of the home was $150,000. Since it was my primary residence, I was able to get 80% of that $150,000, which in this case is $120,000. Keep in mind, if it was an investment property, the numbers are probably going to be a little bit different. I'd probably have to have more equity, so the loan I could get would not be as high. All that to say, took a $120,000 loan. I paid the original loan off. I paid myself back for the $55,000 that I was out of pocket. And at that point, I still have $30,000 in equity because my loan's only for $120,000, but the property is worth $150,000. In addition to that, I have an extra $15,000 in cash because I got a loan for $120,000, but I only took $105,000 to pay myself and the original bank back. That extra $15,000, I could do whatever I want with it. In this particular case, I put it towards the next rental property. Again, the whole idea here is you're recycling money using the same money once, do a loan, pay yourself back, use it a second time. One thing I like to bring up is the clientele for the property. So are you looking for students? Are you looking for families? Depending on that could kind of change. Are you open to pets? A lot of folks are not. That's okay. It just kind of depends on your personal preference. The type of applicants or tenants that you would have for under $1,000 a month. You'll need to know what that looks like. What credit scores should you be hoping for? How much extra do you want your tenants to have in the bank? Do you expect rent to be closer to $1,500 or under a month? These types of things are just things to consider, because the higher you go, it could depend on the whole funnel. How many people are looking for $1,000 a month versus $3,000 a month? I've got one individual that I've spoken with before. I have infinity and beyond here. That's what I would classify him as. He wanted to be known as a 5-star landlord. He'll take care of everything with the yard. He'll take care of anything. If there's a one little bitty light bulb that goes out at any time of the day or night, they'll come by and fix it. But in exchange for that, they're going to charge top dollar. So at that point, he knows that his clientele is going to be different if he was in the $1,000 to $1,500 range. Just very important when you're considering the different options. Again, I'm looking forward to the different videos I'll be posting. Any and all questions that y'all have, feel free to message me. Love to help out in any way possible. There's so many different scenarios to run through, and just check to see if something works in your position or not. Thank y'all. Take care.